Hello and a very warm welcome. I am Gushin Garland and you're watching Firstpost. In the next few minutes, I get you the top 40 updates from around the world, only here on Fast and Factual. Let's get started. We begin with developments from the peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. Moscow said it would only end the war if Kyiv gives up new territory and accepted limits on its military. The terms were presented on Monday at the second round of direct talks in Istanbul, where both sides also agreed to exchange more prisoners of war and return bodies of 12,000 fallen soldiers. Moving to West Asia, the Israeli military said that 3 of its soldiers were killed in intense fighting in northern Gaza Strip. The announcement came hours after Hamas's armed wing said its fighters were engaging in fierce clashes with Israeli forces. This brought the number of Israeli troops killed in the Palestinian territory since the start of the conflict to 424. Iran is reportedly set to reject a US proposal to end a decades-old nuclear dispute, saying it fails to address Tehran's interests or soften Washington's stance on uranium enrichment. The proposal was delivered over the weekend by Oman, which is mediating talks between the two sides. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump once again rules out allowing Iran to enrich uranium under any new deal. In South Asia, a 17-year-old Pakistani social media influencer was shot dead inside her home in Islamabad. Police said Sana Yousaf was killed at close range by a relative and are investigating the case as a possible honor killing. The teenager, known for promoting culture and women's rights online, had nearly 500,000 followers and was shot twice at point-blank range. Meanwhile, a total of 216 prisoners escaped from a district jail in Pakistani city of Karachi. The jailbreak, which is reportedly one of the largest in Pakistan's history, occurred after several earthquakes caused panic among prisoners. Over 80 prisoners have been reportedly re-arrested after search operations were conducted. South Koreans turn out in large numbers to elect a new president 6 months after former leader Yoon Suk-yeol declared martial law, triggering a political chaos. Reports suggest all major polls have put liberal Lee Jae-myung well ahead of conservative rival Kim Moon-so. Mongolia's Prime Minister Oyun Erdiene has resigned after losing a confidence vote amid weeks of youth-led anti-corruption protests in capital Ulaanbaatar. This comes as the landlocked democracy in northern Asia has battled deep-seated corruption for decades. Oyun Erdiene will remain as caretaker prime minister until a successor is appointed within 30 days. In Europe, twin earthquakes rattled the Greece-Turkey region earlier today, causing alarm and minor injuries. A 6.2 magnitude quake struck the Dudokaznis Islands near the Greece-Turkey border. Following that, a 5.8 magnitude earthquake hit near Turkey's Marmaris, killing one teenager due to panic attack and injuring dozens. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk calls for a confidence vote after nationalist Karol Nawrocki won the presidency, prompting fears of a new power struggle in Warsaw. This comes as Nawrocki, a fan of President Trump, has vowed to block Tusk's liberal agenda, including reforms on abortion, LGBTQ rights and Ukraine's aid. In the United States, the White House said President Trump and China's Xi Jinping are expected to likely hold a long-awaited call this week. This comes as trade tensions between the two economic giants flare again. The White House says Trump accuses Beijing of violating a recent deal to roll back tariffs, while China calls the claims bogus and discriminatory. In climate news, wildfires continue to burn across Canada's Manitoba, prompting mass evacuations. The Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre reported that over 1 million hectares have been burnt nationwide so far. Last week, authorities urged 17,000 residents in northern Manitoba to evacuate. The province currently faces 24 active wildfires, while Alberta battles 49 and Saskatchewan 16. Emergency crews resumed their search for a 64-year-old man still missing after a glacier collapse devastated the village of Blatten in southern Switzerland. Massive debris swept through the area on May 28, destroying homes and flooding the few structures that survived. Search efforts had been suspended due to unstable terrain, but resumed once a safer perimeter was established. India's monsoon, which arrived earlier than usual this year, has now stalled. It is delaying rainfall crucial to the country's agriculture and water supply. Meteorological officials expect the monsoon to regain momentum around June 11 to 12. Although it swiftly covered parts of southern and northeastern India, its advance has paused, affecting regions dependent on rain-fed farming. Britain is under pressure to integrate its carbon trading system with the European Union. This is before the EU's new carbon border tax begins in January. Experts warn that the missing deadline could cost the UK industries around $1 billion annually. Despite recent agreements to align the two markets, neither side has confirmed a timeline. The EU's Independent Climate Advisory Board has cautioned against diluting its proposed 2040 emissions target. The European Commission is set to propose a 90% reduction goal, but some officials are considering easing the target or using international carbon credits to fill the gaps. Advisors argue this approach could hinder investment in local industry and infrastructure. On to business and tech news now. Shares in Asian markets edged up cautiously as erratic US trade policies clouded over markets and investors turned defensive ahead of key developments later this week, including possible talks between US President Trump and China's Xi Jinping. MSCI's broadest index outside Japan rose 0.6% earlier today, while Japan's Nikkei and Hong Kong's Hang Seng also climbed with solid gains. China's factory activity shrank in May for the first time in 8 months, indicating US tariffs are now starting to directly hurt the world's second-largest economy. The Caixin S&P Global Manufacturing PMI fell to 48.3, down from 50.4 in April, marking the first contraction since September last year. New export orders also declined for a second straight month and at the fastest pace since July 2023. Meanwhile, in the United States, manufacturing contracted for a third straight month in May, and suppliers took the longest time in nearly 3 years to deliver inputs amid tariff-driven bottlenecks as well as higher input costs. A survey showed manufacturing PMI edged down to a 6-month low of 48.5 last month from 48.7 in April. A PMI reading below 50 indicates contradiction in the manufacturing sector. France's Sanofi has agreed to buy US biotech firm Blueprint Medicines for up to $9.5 billion. The deal comes as Sanofi looks to strengthen its position in tackling rare immunology diseases. The acquisition is expected to close in the third quarter of the year, pending regulatory and shareholder approvals. Major US airlines say they oppose a new effort to advance legislation that would reduce fees charged by Visa and MasterCard on transactions. They warn the legislation could force them to stop offering reward credit cards that give consumers frequent flyer miles. Airlines and aviation unions tell senators the bill could reduce air travel and harm tourism nationwide. Toymaker Mattel says it is combining its film and television units from Mattel Studios. The move comes as the company seeks to produce content driven by its iconic brands and potentially repeat the commercial success of the 2023 Barbie movie. Media company Walt Disney says it is laying off several hundred more workers worldwide, affecting jobs in film, television, and corporate finance departments. The cuts come amid a shift from cable to streaming and follow last year's layoffs of around 7,000 staff. Disney says no teams will be shut down entirely and describes the layoffs as surgical and targeted. Tech giant Microsoft cuts over 300 jobs this week as the tech industry trims costs, even while pouring billions into developing artificial intelligence. This follows last month's 6,000 job cuts, which were the largest layoffs in years. Microsoft says the move will help it stay competitive amid rapid AI expansion. Apple files a legal challenge against an EU order which forces it to open up its closed ecosystem to rivals like Meta and Google. Apple says the requirements are unreasonable and could jeopardize user privacy and stifle innovation. However, until the case is resolved, Apple must still comply with the EU's interoperability demands. Google agrees to spend $500 million over 10 years to overhaul its compliance structure and settle a shareholder lawsuit. The case accused top executives of failing to protect the company from antitrust risks. As part of the deal, Google will create new compliance committees and reporting channels. The company denies any wrongdoing but says it's committed to avoiding prolonged litigation. Moving to sports, we begin with cricket. Punjab and Bengaluru will face each other in the IPL final. The two sides will lock horns at Ahmedabad's Narendra Modi Stadium. The two teams have been ever present in the IPL since the league first began in 2008, but neither side has yet won the title. Sri Lanka will host Pakistan matches as this year's Women's ODI World Cup. The announcement was made as part of ongoing arrangements surrounding fixtures involving India and Pakistan. The Sri Lankan city of Colombo will join Indian cities Bengaluru, Guwahati, Indore and Visakhapatnam in staging the Women's World Cup. The event is scheduled to run from September 30 until November 2 later this year. South Africa's wicketkeeper batter Henrik Klaasen announced his retirement from international cricket. The 33-year-old had already announced retirement from tests in January last year. He played 60 ODIs, 50 T20 international and 4 test matches. Klaasen's final appearance for South Africa came in March this year during the Champions Trophy semi-final against New Zealand. In football, Ryan Mason leaves Tottenham Hotspur to take over as West Brom head coach on a 3-year contract. At the age of 33, Mason became the first youngest head coach in the Championship. The move ends his 7-year coaching career at Tottenham. Reports say England are using heated tents as part of their training. This is being reportedly done to replicate the conditions they could experience at the World Cup in the US, Canada and Mexico next year. The English side are currently in Spain for a World Cup training camp. England will play Andorra in a World Cup qualifier later on Saturday. In tennis, Serbian icon Novak Djokovic recorded his historic 100th win at the Roland Garros. The 24-time Grand Slam winner needed just 3 sets to beat Cameron Norrie 6-2, 6-3, 6-2 in the 4th round. Djokovic will face Alexander Zverev in the quarterfinals. Men's world number 1 Yannick Sinner enters French Open quarterfinals. The Italian beat Russia's Andrei Rublev 6-1, 6-3, 6-4 in the 4th round. Sinner will face Alexander Bublik of Kazakhstan in the quarterfinals. Women's world number 2 Coco Gauff entered French Open quarterfinals. The American beat her Russian rival in straight sets. Gauff will face her fellow countrywoman Madison Keys in the quarterfinals. In badminton, Indian campaign in the Indonesia Open started with a bang. This as two-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu got past her long-time Japanese rival Nozomi Okuhara. Sindhu beat Okuhara 22-20, 21-23, 21-15 in their opening match of the tournament. Meanwhile, star Indian shuttler Lakshya Sen crashed out of the Indonesia Open. The Paris Olympic semi-finalist lost out to world number 1 Shi Yuki of China in the opening match. Putting up a valiant fight, Sen lost the match 21-11, 22-20, 21-15. And finally, in entertainment news, Nick Frost, who will play Hagrid in HBO's upcoming Harry Potter series, says he won't imitate Robbie Coltrane's iconic performance. The actor said he will honor its spirit. Frost said he sees Hagrid as a complex character, calling it a lovely, lost, violent, funny, warm child. Frost looks forward to exploring those layers in the new series, which will dedicate 1 season per book. Blake Lively seeking to drop her emotional distress claims against director Justin Baldoni. This is only without prejudice, meaning she could refile later. The move follows Baldoni's legal team's request for access to her medical and therapy records. His lawyers argue Lively wants to avoid disclosing information while retaining the option to sue again in the future. The dispute centers around her lawsuit related to Baldoni's work on It Ends With Us. Jamie Foxx didn't hold back while addressing Sean Combs' ongoing sex trafficking trial. During a Q&A for his Netflix special Speaking Candidly, Foxx called Combs a nasty person. Foxx lamented the downfall of a figure once celebrated in black culture. Responding to criticism over her casting as Jesus and Jesus Christ superstar, Cynthia Erivo said she's unfazed by conservative backlash. Speaking in an interview, Erivo emphasized the joy of performing in a musical at the Hollywood Bowl. The production, running from August 1 to 3, will also feature Adam Lambert as Judas. And Dexter Morgan, the beloved fictional serial killer, now has his own limited edition Funko Pop figure. It has been released ahead of Dexter Resurrection, premiering July 11th. The set includes Dexter and his sister Deborah Morgan dressed in show-accurate outfits. The revival continues the franchise that ended in 2013 and has since spawned spin-offs and prequels. That's all for today. Thank you for joining us. I am Gushin Galan and we'll see you right back here tomorrow. Stay informed and stay tuned to Firstpost.